In the last video clip, we went through the 6 criteria pollutants. Next, let's take a look at the locations that are non-attainment areas and what that means. A non-attainment area simply means that your area did not meet air quality standards for one or more of the criteria pollutants. Thus, really, your local population is being exposed to unhealthy air. You can easily look up this information on the EPA website. Start at the EPA website. That's www.epa.gov. Then go to Environmental Topics, Air, and over here to the air pollutants, and you can see the criteria pollutants. Then you could look up information on any one of the 6 criteria pollutants, or you can go over here to the Green Book non-attainment areas. From here you can get information on non-attainment areas for any of the 6 criteria pollutants or for areas that are out of compliance with more than one of the criteria pollutants. There's lots of information here. I generally scroll down to the maps. There you go. This map shows areas that were in non-attainment for one or more of the 6 criteria pollutants. Much of California looks pretty bad, but some areas are in non-attainment for 5 of the 6 pollutants. Yikes! And there's one county in Arizona that's actually in non-attainment for all 6 of the criteria pollutants. You can also get maps that are bigger on a state-by-state basis. Locally, ozone pollution is generally the pollutant that causes us the most concern, so I've brought up the ozone map here. You can see that our county has marginal attainment. We don't always make it. Remember that ozone is formed from NOx and car exhaust in the presence of sunlight. So the late afternoon commute time is generally the worst. If you exercise at that time, you may notice that your lungs burn. That's ozone at work. The EPA also regulates other air pollutants, other than just the 6 criteria pollutants. We don't have ambient air standards for these other pollutants, but there are regulations on emissions. Take a few moments to read through this table. Notably, the EPA is also tasked with regulating carbon dioxide emissions. This is something that actually had to go all the way up to the Supreme Court. Environmental groups and the states fighting against fossil fuel companies, basically, to determine if carbon dioxide could be considered a pollutant. The Supreme Court said yes, that the EPA can and should be regulating carbon dioxide emissions. During the Obama administration, rules were made for power plants and other emitters regarding carbon dioxide emissions, but as you can imagine, these rules are currently under fire. I encourage you to pay attention and get involved if so inclined. Much of what we've talked about thus far is standards that have been set due to provisions in the Clean Air Act. Not surprisingly, the Clean Air Act was first passed in the 1970s, the decade of the environment, and since that time it's been amended several times. The Clean Air Act is working. It has dramatically lowered the 6 criteria pollutants, which as a result has saved lives and improved the quality of life for many people. Additionally, and notably, this has all been done as the economy continues to grow. The idea that somehow emission standards are stifling for our economy just simply isn't true. In fact, it's probably less true today than in the past as our global community moves more towards renewable energy. Check out this graph and notice that our gross domestic profit continues to increase even as our aggregate emissions continue to decrease. So the Clean Air Act is working. It's improving our quality of life and extending lives. But it's also under attack and underfunded. This quote is woefully out of date. It's over 15 years old. But it's actually probably even more true today than it was in 2002. It notes that simply if we enforced our existing clean air legislation, the United States could save at least another 6,000 lives and prevent 140,000 asthma attacks. What this is telling us is that laws are great, but we also need to set aside money for enforcement. I encourage you to look into the news reports now and see the dramatic cuts that are being made to the Environmental Protection Agency. This is likely to reduce enforcement even further. So again, we can have awesome laws, but if they're not enforced, what's the point? So what can we do? I encourage you to come up with some ideas. The sources for many of the pollutants we mentioned was the combustion of fossil fuels. So anything we can do to limit fossil fuel combustion is likely to reduce air pollution. So that means using less electricity, driving less, insulating our homes, buying less stuff, etc. Even more specifically, cars are the source of much of that pollution. So better city planning so that we don't have to use cars as much, better public transit, better car technology, and simply making a commitment to drive less. All those would be great ideas, and I'm sure you can come up with some more specific ideas on your own. I'm not focusing on the CAFE standards this semester, but it's pretty interesting to check out. The CAFE standards are the Corporate Average Fuel Economy Standards. So these are the standards that automakers have to abide by when they're making new cars. As you can imagine, the creation of these standards gets very political, and the auto industry and the fossil fuel industry tries to convince politicians that nobody will ever be able to afford a car again if they increase the standards in any sort of way. Of course, this isn't the case. Generally, people want to buy high-mileage cars, and generally, the added cost becomes fairly insignificant over time. Amazingly, we went for 17 years, from 1990 to 2007, without increasing the CAFE standards, as if technology didn't increase during that time period. It's ridiculous. In 2007, the standards did change, and they have been changing again since that time. But this is, again, one of the other standards that is under fire from our current administration. I encourage you to pay attention and get better data and more updated data than this graph provides. The last topic we're going to address is acid deposition. Acid deposition is what people historically have called acid rain. Acid deposition is a more appropriate term, however, as the acidic moisture can be in the form of fog or snow, or it can even be deposited dry. So it's not only rain that's the issue. The first point I want to make is that air pollution does not stay within political boundaries. In the 1990s and earlier, one of our biggest conflicts with Canada was that we were destroying their forests and lakes with our air pollution through acidic deposition. Here in California, we're lucky. We don't have any close upwind neighbors. However, we do get measurable air pollution from China, even though we are half a world away. Next, let's look specifically at acid deposition. It's caused, like most air pollution, by burning fossil fuels. Coal-burning power plants are the primary culprit, but cars and natural gas power plants contribute as well. Nitrogen oxides and sulfur dioxide combine in the atmosphere with water to form sulfuric acid and nitric acid, which are secondary pollutants. Then these acids can travel airborne for great distances before they are deposited. Half of all acid deposition isn't in the liquid form at all. It's dry deposition, where particulates containing nitrogen oxides and sulfur dioxide fall to the earth and combine with water there to form the acids. Aquatic ecosystems and high elevation forests that may be typically shrouded in fog are at the greatest risk. In the northeast part of the United States and up into Canada, huge areas of forest were damaged, and entire lakes became devoid of life due to the acidic conditions. Basically, the acidified lakes had pHs that were outside the range of tolerance for many fish and insects. Additionally, acidified soils release heavy metals, which can be toxic to plants. And the acidified soil water can also leach nutrients out of the soil, and it can directly damage plant roots. Also, acidic deposition causes billions of dollars worth of damage each year to buildings, statues, metals like bridges, and paint. Limestone and marble, which are common rocks used for building, are particularly susceptible to acidic conditions. So, how acidic is acid rain? Well, you may remember that a neutral pH is 7.0. Well, most unpolluted rain is actually slightly more acidic than that because the water combines with CO2 in the atmosphere to form carbonic acid, and so even natural unpolluted rain has a pH of around 5.6. But in the 1990s, a pH of 4 was not uncommon in the northeast part of the United States. You can see that acid deposition had the greatest impact in the northeast part of our country and also into Canada. Why is this? Well, of course, there's a lot of cars over here, but also, more importantly, there's a whole lot of coal-burning power plants in this part of the country here, and that winds blow that sulfur dioxide to the east, to the northeast, and up into Canada. In California, we don't have any immediate neighbors upwind. It's not as much of an issue here, and also, we aren't doing any coal burning. Thankfully, conditions are improving. Regulations requiring coal-burning power plants to lower sulfur dioxide emissions have helped considerably, as did regulations limiting nitrogen oxide emissions from cars. Though more still needs to be done. What can you do? Anything you can do to decrease fossil fuel combustion will help. Drive less. Use less gas by having a high-mileage car. Walk, bike, carpool, use public transport. Insulate your home. Weather strip around your windows and doors. Use efficient appliances. Turn off the lights when you leave the room. Buy less stuff. The products made for you may be made halfway across the country by coal-burning power, or halfway across the world. Furthermore, everything that you buy is transported to you using planes, trains, or automobiles. So buying less stuff is a huge part of the solution.